Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about Trails to Azure, which I finished at about 4 a.m. this morning. I really like this game. I've got these art books that I haven't got to dig into yet that have the Sky Trilogy, Zero, and Azure in them, and I'm very excited to finally get to look into those now that I have beaten Azure. Um, there's a lot that happens in this game, and I want to preface all of this with no spoilers by saying that this is fighting currently within me, for top spot in this universe of games, in this whole series, with Trails in the Sky second chapter. Most of you know the glowing review that I gave Trails in the Sky second chapter. I think that game is incredible. I think that this game rivals it in a way that I didn't expect it to when I started. There are enough little things that I feel like I want to still give it to Sky SC, but depending on how it falls as time passes, that may change. There's a lot of stuff that I did not get to experience because I didn't want to follow a guide for my first playthrough. I didn't want to have to be stuck to, hey, go to these specific places that maybe I wouldn't have thought to go to otherwise, to get secret quests, to be able to get all of the bonding events complete. I only completed one bonding event for reference. So that's definitely, I think that's my biggest issue with Ao no Kiseki or Trails to Azure. But again, when my biggest problem is just that I want to play it again to see all the other stuff, I do wish that some of that stuff was a little bit more easy to find on a first playthrough. I know there's a lot of stuff that I missed, not just the bonding events. There was apparently, I had a buddy tell me that there were secret weapons I could find that I never did, entire secret bosses that I could fight that I never did. So I'm very excited for a replay of Azure, and I 100% will replay. I want to replay it and Sky SC just to get the full experience. And I kind of feel like I need to replay Zero as well, just to get the ramifications of everything that happened in Azure in Zero. But a spoiler-free thoughts on it is that it is an incredible game that is absolutely worth playing, and that you should play Zero first, because the two obviously go in together. And of course, it is even more benefited if you have played the Sky Trilogy, Sky FC, Sky SC, and Sky the Third, because of the stuff that happens there. Very, very much enjoyed this game. 100% recommend. Huge thanks again to the Geofront team for all their hard work. This translation was impeccable. Every once in a while, I would get just a single glitch texture, or a line that loaded in, I guess not loaded in wrong, but had one, missing a comma or something like that, right? It was to the same level as the Sky Trilogy, which every once in a while would have a weird texture or have a line that was missing a comma. This does not feel like a fan-translated work. This feels like a localization, and they did an incredible job, and I hope that they are very proud of their work, because they absolutely should be. That's kind of all I can say for non-spoilers. I have a lot I want to talk about in this game, and I'm going to try to keep it straightforward, right? I'm going to try and follow a path so that I don't just go all over the place. But I liked Azure a lot. I have one other small complaint, and it's a very, very small one, right? But I'm not a huge fan of the orbment system in Zero and Azure. I think that it works, and there are ways to work with it. But I think that after having played Cold Steel 1, I think that is probably the best the orbment system has been. And even the more simple version of the Skies orbment system, I think I liked more. Because in this case, you have to build up, I don't know how to word it exactly, but it feels like there's a bunch of characters, and they all have slots that need to be upgraded, and you need to manage their quartz, and characters come and go in and out of the story a lot, kind of like the problem that I had in Cold Steel 1, where it auto-unequips a lot of their stuff, so that when you get them back, they don't have their master quartz equipped, and they don't have all their quartz equipped that you had them equipped with. It's just a little nitpick, but I do think that I liked it more, even with having to constantly re-equip it. I think I liked the system more in Cold Steel 1. I think it was easier to parse for getting the best arts. Whereas here, I kind of just went, all right, well, Lloyd's Master Quartz gives him fire, so I'm going to just give him a bunch of fire quartz and keep upping those every time I get a better one of them. Which, I mean, it worked. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely worked. I do think that the Master Quartz abilities are a little broken. When you get the Master Quartz to level 5, you get an art that it can cast, and those arts are really good. The ability to just make your attacks and your CP, like, attacks and crafts do 50% more damage. There were fights that I feel like probably should have been really difficult, that all I had to do was, don't get me wrong, Lloyd was one of my best damage dealers, but if I lock him down for a second, Randy's hitting hard on his next attack. So I think that, maybe, I guess it's a reward, right? So I guess it doesn't necessarily need to be balanced better. And again, I played on the easiest difficulty because I was trying to get through it for the story. I'm trying to beat all of these games before the end of the year. On the replay through, I will probably play on normal or hard and see how I feel about it there. But Randy hits so hard with that buff, which is fun in its own right. But towards the end, there were enemies that, from the chests that are trapped, that definitely feel like they should have been really difficult, that Randy just wiped the floor with that art. That aside, I really like the combat system in this game. I think it's really, really solid. I really like the characters. I really like the music. The music in Azure is incredible. I love the story in Azure, and I love the places that it goes. I think that the getting to explore Crossbell in more ways is even better, and especially in the final chapter, Crossbell is a lot of fun to explore. It reminds me a lot of the Ruin chapter. Not Ruon, the Ruin chapter from Trails in the Sky SC. And it's real good. So let's get into it, right? Spoilers on from here on. The prologue. The prologue's really solid. You team up with Arios McLean, man. I got things I want to say. You team up with Dudley, and you work your way through to take down Ernst and Speaker Hartman. Ernst and Speaker Hartman were never I guess Ernst was a good villain to me in Zero. There was a lot going on with him. It doesn't really feel like there's a lot going on with him here, but it is nice that Lloyd is able to talk him down and is able to save him where he couldn't save Joachim, Speaker Hartman is kind of just a nothing to me. He needs to exist, but it doesn't feel like there's enough going on for him as a character. He's more of a plot device in a lot of ways, and that's okay, but the prologue was very quick. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was really fun getting to go with Noelle, and then Noelle joins. She already was a member of the SSS at that point, but she joins the SSS. You have Noelle all the time, and you also have Wazy, and having Wazy around was a ton of fun all game. I thought these opening chapters were really solid. Everything going on there I have my Twitter thread up where I can go back to my pictures here. I thought all of this was really good, right? I think that right away, you have the core of a good Trails game. You have a party of interesting characters. You have a city to explore. You have chess messages. It's going, right? But it is the fact that you from go, basically, get introduced back to Kevin Graham and Reese Argent, and having them be a part of the story right from the get-go, basically. And yeah, you may say, well, Kevin's not a big deal for most of the game, but Reese is there the whole time, which is really nice. Right off, you get, hey, Randy's on his way back, Tio's on her way back, the whole crew will be together again, we got Wazy, we got Noelle, everything's going to be great. And then you get introduced to Sigmund Orlando. And when I saw him, I love his design, right? I love his design. But there's something about Sigmund Orlando that just immediately put a weight in my gut. Where I was like, this guy is going to be a problem. And in some ways, he really is. And we'll get back to that. There's so much that happens in these early chapters that it could be its own game, right? It could be like a Sky FC. Even though Zero is the FC to this second chapter. I kind of feel like I need to brush over all of that to get to the big stuff that happens later. But I do think the early game is really solid. The stuff where you find out that Commander Bales and Chief Sergei were married. The stuff that you interact with Prince Olivier, with Lecter and with Kilika and with Chloe and all the little moments there. That entire discussion with Chloe and the SSS was great. I really loved it. Getting to see Sieg again, getting to see Julia, getting to see Mueller again. It almost feels like a different game. I beat all of this game in the last week and a half, And it almost feels like a different game, these early sections, because of how much happens in the back half. And that is nuts to me. But I think my favorite thing in this early game is the stuff with Randy. And it's not until the mid game, like late mid game, that you really get to the cool stuff with Randy. But Randy Orlando in Zero was a character that I really enjoyed. Randy Orlando in Azure is a character that I love. He's in my top 5 now. Randy Orlando is great. I love this character. And the stuff that happens with him where on the way to Michelin, right? Where Lloyd and Randy are having a conversation and Randy's just like, you know, I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. And Lloyd has to come and talk to him. I love these characters so much, and I think the way they interact together is really, really good. I like it a lot. Crossbell's changing, obviously. Dieter Kreuss is now the mayor, and we're going to get back to that. And there's a lot going on, but these early chapters give you time to just go back into the role of this is the SSS. We got our new members. We're doing our missions. We're trying to solve everything. The trade conference is coming up, but everything's going to be cool. Everything's going to be fine. The trade conference is a thing. There's so much that happens there. The moment where the terrorists, where specifically G, as we know him, right, Gideon, gets gunned down, is really potent because you can feel the horror that the SSS have of we didn't make it in time. And it's such a potent segment that immediately shows the Red Constellation is somebody not to mess with. You know, we get to meet Shirley and everything. There's just a lot going on there. And then we get a beach episode. Like just an intermission in the middle of it where you go to the beach at Michelin. And it's like, sure, why not? Yeah. And this is a really fun period of the game, right? You have Wazy with the shades. You have the girls all coming out in their swimsuits and Lloyd having to decide who he thinks looks the best. You have the sandcastle, hunting for the shells. You have the beach volleyball. You have the sunscreen moment. There's just it's a weird diversion in the middle of all this that is fun and then unravels. And it's from this moment on when everything starts to fall apart for the SSS. Lynn and Aeolia wind up going missing, and then you hunt them down, and you have to fight Ouroboros, who are here now. We find out the truth about Rishia. You know, there's just a lot going on. Now, obviously, we as the viewer already knew all of that, but it was when the SSS finds out about Rishia Mao. And there's some weird stuff going on with Kia, but everything's so hectic right now, we don't have time to stop and talk about it. And there's a lot going on in the best way. It's constantly story beats just falling into after the other. It's really, really good. You did ever run in with Ouroboros before that with Campanella, but you didn't really know that's where he was from at the time. When he trapped you in a burning room and made you play Palm Party against him. By the way, I was playing at 60 frames per second. I lost that minigame like 7 times. Playing the Geofront version at 60 frames per second during the Palm Party section against Campanella is very difficult. And I finally Googled it because I was like, man, I can't beat him. He's so much faster than me. And I read online that people were like, yeah, turn it down to 30. And he goes at normal speed. And I was like, okay. And then I beat him, no problem. But it was really funny to me. Just, I could not beat him. From there, Randy goes AWOL. And you have one of my favorite scenes in this game, which is where Randy explains his backstory. And in this scene, Randy, for the first time, gives his true feelings about what he is. The facade that he's been putting on all this time melts away, and he reveals that he actually like super hates himself for what he's done. And then Lloyd is just like, hey, it's okay. We've all done things we shouldn't have. It's okay. And it's like, Lloyd, that is such a understatement, not misunderstanding, understatement of the situation. But Lloyd wins him over by going, hey, even if you won't forgive yourself, we will. And it just, There's also like so many hints at this point about Wazy, because Wazy makes that comment about how in the eyes of Adios, we're not all that different, are we? And best line of the game, in my opinion, goes to Randy's, I feel like I might forgive myself for everything I've done. That scene is incredible. I absolutely loved it. For a very tense moment, I was rushing to try and get to Randy because I was afraid he was going to die. So glad he didn't, but that scene was incredible. I cannot wait on a replay to get to that scene and get to see it all again, because I just think it's really good. And then you finish that off with Randy just smiling, and it starts playing a song called Miss You. The soundtrack in this game is incredible. I feel like now's a good enough time as any to go, hey, some of my favorite tracks are the Azure Arbitrator, which is the final boss theme, which we'll get to. Yet Here We Are, The Truth of the Rainy Day, The Tree at the Farthest End, Beyond the Paradise of Lies. Man, where is it? I have the whole song list up here so that I can get these names right. Ferocious Beasts is really good, but my absolute favorite is Things Have Started Moving. I love that song. That song's incredible. Also, Dark Throne is top tier as well. This game has incredible music. Anyway, back to the story. From there, after you save Randy, it falls apart. Crossbell's longest day comes back again with the fate of Crossbell, as you don't know what's going to happen here. Red Constellation is attacking Crossbell City. You have the police station gets grenaded, and you don't know if Fran's okay. You have multiple places just being attacked. And then in the middle of all this, you have Ilya Platir being run through by a chandelier, crushed under this chandelier. No idea if she's alive or dead, as she gets hauled away. And Rishia Mao declaring her vengeance on Shirley Orlando. Incredible scene. Super powerful as the Arkansas burns around her, right? Incredible scene. Flow from there into the pickup, trying to put the pieces back together, trying to help everybody and make sure everybody's okay. They are, thank goodness, but not as they could be, right? In the first game, there were no real main characters that were badly hurt or anything. But in this game, people get messed up. Ilya, she's determined to go back, right? But she may never truly be able to dance again. And it affects Rishia on a deep level. And I really love Rishia's character arc in this game. We go from there to the real unraveling, which is the Arios takes Kia away, and then Dieter Krois declares himself president of the independent state of Crossbell, the autonomous independent state of Crossbell. Arios McLean as his right hand to defend everything, Secretary of Defense, basically. And then things happen. The Empire and Calvard both attack. And in the middle of all this, Kia awakens. And the Ions show up. And Calvard and Arabonia are both rebuffed. And then Gorelia Fortress gets nuked. And it just, there's so much that happens in such a short span. You have Lloyd and the SSS get captured. Wazy's gone. Noel's working for the enemy. And then you have this great prison break with Lloyd, where he teams up with Garcia Rossi to get out of the prison. And I know I'm getting excited, but the entire last portion of this game is this incredible rush of action and suspense and intrigue in such a cool way. And I didn't even talk about the events at Michelin. I do wish you could get more Michelin tickets, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about the story right now. The rush down of the end here, as you escape and Zeit shows up, and then you slowly piece like all your team back together, and you go get them all back together, and you run into Noelle, and you have to fight Noelle to be able to show her, hey, you know, you're working for the wrong side, but she already knew she was just dedicated to the goal that she'd laid out for herself. It's incredible. I said in the Zero review that Zero unravels in the best way. Azure overwhelmed that. This entire last section of Crossbell City's locked down. We can't get in there. Armorica Village is having to deal with cryptids showing up. We've got Wald is now a demon and has attacked his own people. We've got Lloyd in prison. We've got Tio and house arrest at Ursula Medical College. We've got Randy fighting alongside a resistance force from the CGF that has Muriel as the captain in Mainz. And then we've got Ellie locked up with her grandpa at Michelin and have to bring the team all back together. We team up with Wazy, who we find out is a Gralsritter. And now in hindsight, it makes perfect sense. The testaments, the references to Adios' will, it's so obvious now that he was a Gralsritter. And Kevin Graham shows up, and then Rin and Pattermatter shows up, and Joshua and Estelle with her. Look, this game is incredible. And the last rush of this game, I wish I could have played it all in one sitting, because it really feels like you should, right? It's long, there's a lot going on, but it really feels like you should. And in this final chapter, as you piece everything back together, again, like I said earlier, it kind of feels like Sky SC's Ruin chapter, where you have to go around to all these places you've been before. You rebuild the team, you get ready to go, you get your car, and then you ram through the door of Orcus Tower, which I haven't even talked about Orcus Tower. Fight your way up to the top, fight Dieter Kreuss, who we still haven't talked about at all yet, beat the White Aeon. We didn't even talk about the Bells and having to go fight Campanella and Arianrod and how incredibly tough Arianrod is. This game is nuts. There's so much that happens towards the end of it. You beat Dieter, and that's when you find out the true mastermind behind this all has been Ian Grimwood. And I can see where some might be, well, why? Why did we need a true mastermind? Why did we need somebody to be pulling the strings? But now, let's talk about them now. Let's talk about our villains, right? We have Dieter Kreuss, we have Maribel Kreuss, we have Ian Grimwood, and we have Arios McLean. And Dieter Kreuss, I liked Dieter a lot in Zero, but there's a couple moments in Zero where he seems a little unhinged, right? Him talking about his own justice, him at the dinner party. There's a couple moments where it just seems like he's a little too zealous, you know? Maribel, I should have not trusted from the start, but I went, Belle is Ellie's best friend. It's fine, you know? But she was not trustworthy. She was strange the entire time. And, yeah, she's still her. She's now an Anguis. But Ian Grimm, we needed somebody. Arios is great, right? He's so strong. But none of those three could plan everything out. They needed a mastermind. They needed somebody that could put all the pieces together. And there were a couple moments in this game that made me suspect something was going on with Mr. Grimwood. The first is when he's at the trade conference. And the line is said, well, we needed our best lawyer here. Which is fine, right? But it's weird that he's not at the observation platform. He's in the room. Lecter Arundel's not allowed in the room. Kilika Roran's not allowed in the room. But Ian Grimwood's allowed in the room. And the explanation given tided me over at the time, but at the time I was like, man, that's really strange that he's allowed in there. And then the second one is during the final time in Crossbell, where you're trying to stop all the bells, and you've made it into the city, and you're fighting away through the city, and you meet the Bracers, and you go and you get to Guillaume's factory to be able to work out there. And I went from there around everywhere else. I went to Arkansas. I went to check on Lloyd's friends. I went to check on Lloyd's Uncle Miles. And then I went to go check on Mr. Grimwood. And his office was locked. And so then I found Pete in the grocery store. And Pete was like, yeah, I don't know where he is. And he's like, maybe he was still at the Orcus Tower when everything got locked up. And I was like, well, that's Sure. Okay, this is weird that he's not here, but sure. And then I got to Orcus Tower and I couldn't find him when I found all the other dignitaries and anybody else that was still there. And I was like, okay, something's going on. Either he's a hostage or he's in on this. And then it's revealed that he is the mastermind. And I think of all the people they could have chosen, not only does he make perfect sense, because he's the one that benefits most from all this with his goals, right? But he has ingratiated himself with everyone to the point where he is required, right? You need his services. And that is the perfect setup for a villain. And he's not even like, he is a villain, but you understand why he's doing what he's doing. He's doing what he's doing for the protection of Crossbell. But ironically, what he and Dieter Croix, Maribel were trying to do is the exact thing that led to the stagnation of those that lived on the Libra Arc in Sky SC. And I find it really interesting that you get both perspectives on it that way. You get the, well, we need this overbearing strength. We need this overwhelming ability so that we can stop the attackers, so Crossbell can stand above all of its allies or foes, so it can be the premier nation in Zemuria. And because of that, we will have everything our citizens could ever want, and they will be happy forever. Whereas the Libra Arc showed us that when people have no challenge, when people have no struggle in life, they quickly become lax, become lazy, and they have no desire to move forward anymore, and they become stagnant, and then they die. And I think it's really interesting to see Sky SC deal with stagnation from that perspective, and then Trails to Azure deal with it from the other perspective. And the whole final dungeon, not counting Orcus Tower. Orcus Tower's fine. I didn't love Orcus Tower. I love the final dungeon. I think this is probably my favorite final dungeon in the series yet. I don't know, I've said that about most of them leading up, right? But I think this is probably my favorite. I love the tree, the Azure tree. I love climbing that tree was really fun. A lot of the enemies were easily avoided if I didn't want to fight them. Rishia's ability, because I forgot to mention you have Rishia in your party now. Rishia's ability to let you start a fight with advantage meant that sometimes even if I was surprised, I still got advantage, which was really nice. I wound up fighting the final boss with just the SSS, with Wacy and Noel, of course, included in that, because it just seemed right, you know? But leading up to it, you fight Wald, and you beat Wald, and Wazy's finally able to get through to him. And you fight Shirley, and you beat Shirley, and Rishia's finally able to defeat her and set her straight. And then you fight Sigmund, and Randy's finally able to get his closure, right? And then you fight Arios McLean. And you get the truth of what happened with Arios and Guy and Ian Grimwood. And you can see how Arios is trying so hard not to say, well, Ian shot him. Because Arios's guilt is like immense. He knows it's his fault. If he hadn't been fighting Guy, if he hadn't tried to kill Guy, then Guy never would have died. And so he's blamed himself for all these years. And it's just really interesting to see the way that unveils. The story beats there, and Guy Banning's, man, such a great character, just in the little bits we get from him. But the way that it all turns out, where you fight Arios using Guy's tonfas, and you beat him, and then he before he falls tells you this is what's going on, and then falls. It's just really good. I really like Arios McLean as a villain. I did not expect him to be a villain. Dieter Croix, I kind of had like an inkling. Again, later on, as I told you, Ian Grimwood, I was like, oh, what's going on here? I never expected Arios. And I guess I should have, but I never did. And it was just really interesting getting to fight him and finally overcome him as that first barrier the SSS really noticed that they were going to have to try and reach, and they finally reached it, you know? From there, you go to fight Maribel. You fight the Azure Demiurgos, right? That Kia has become. And It's a pretty good final boss fight. I didn't love it as much as Zero's. I think I like Zero's a little bit more, but I do still really like this final boss fight. The first whole mechanic in the first phase of the time, and you have to kill the ads before they can be absorbed, otherwise he can heal or rewind, was really good. He had the ability to vanish anybody that did a big S-craft on him, so you had to be really careful about how you aimed those. It was a fun fight. I liked it a lot. And the ending, where it's revealed that Kia's power draws people to her, it leads to this question of, like, do any of these people even love her, right? And Lloyd's answer is just, it doesn't matter how we came to love you. The memories we've made together are real. And with that, he's able to reach her, and he's able to pull her back. And I absolutely loved that ending. That ending was incredible. There are some moments interspersed throughout this game that I think are better than that ending, but I do still think that ending is really, really solid. The SSS comes together, they leave, knowing full well that the choices that they have made will lead Crossbell into a lot of trouble because it no longer has any way to protect itself from Erebonia and Calvard. And I did not watch after the credits, but it's not going to be good for Crossbell. And I think our characters are probably going to get split up for a little while. But I'm really hoping that we can wind up liberating Crossbell at some point in the future. And we'll see, of course. But I like these characters a lot. I like the story a lot. Let me talk about the individual characters for a little bit before we wrap this up. Like I said, I have a lot of thoughts. And then I still haven't talked about the big moments with Kevin and the big moment with Ren. And I'll get to both of those as well. Because my three favorite moments in this game are Randy's backstory and the moment with him on the road to Mainz. The moment with Ren and Patter Matter that I'm going to do my best not to cry at, so I'm going to talk about it last. Because as you know, Ren is like number 2 in my favorite characters in this series. And then like the third one is Kevin Graham going all out, man. I know it may not be to the level that those other two are, but Kevin Graham going all out with his Merkaba was incredible. And I really like Kevin Graham. I know I've said that many times. I think he's a great character. I've been told by a lot of people that he's not super popular among the fandom, but I really like Kevin. So let's talk characters, right? Lloyd is a really good protagonist. There is a moment where Lloyd is on the run where he decides that he cannot give in, and he basically tells the CDF guys that are after him that you can break my legs if you want to. I'll still get back up because he has to go rescue his team and he has to rescue Kia. And I really liked that scene. I like Lloyd a lot as a main character. I don't like him as much as I like Estelle or Kevin, but of the 4 protagonists so far, for me, it would be Estelle, Kevin, Lloyd, Reen, and we'll see how Reen continues to develop. So far, he's only gotten 1 game compared to these others, where Estelle got 3, Kevin's gotten 1.25, 1.5 maybe, and I guess Estelle got 2.5, and we'll say 2.75 because she showed up in 0 for a good while as well, and Lloyd has gotten 2, so we'll see how things change as we go. I liked Ellie well enough. I don't think Ellie had a lot of great moments in this game, but it's also possible that I just missed some of them. But I think the moments that she has are really stellar. I think the moment where she basically says, hey, Uncle Dieter and Belle have been family to me, but that doesn't matter when they're trying to hurt my home and people I care about, and they kidnapped my daughter, so it's time to stop them. And I really liked that. I think that Ellie came into her own, even if I wish she had gotten more moments, right? I think Tio, in a lot of ways, the same way. Tio missed out on a lot of moments, but what she got instead was a lot of snark with Wazy, which I really liked, and a lot of snark with Randy. So Tio still got some really good moments to shine. Randy Orlando might as well have been like the secondary main protagonist. I mean, they're all part of the main team. Randy Orlando got a ton of moments in this game, and I loved it. I love Randy. Absolutely great character. Wonderful time. Cannot wait to see him, hopefully, in the rest of the series. I like Noelle. I think really she got she got two big moments, right? She got the moments early on with the SSS, especially with Lloyd, like at the beginning, and then she gets that big moment where I guess she's the driver too. So she gets the third moment where she busts through the doors, but she gets that big moment where she's working with the CDF, and you have to fight against her, and then she comes to her senses. I like Noelle a lot. I think that I wish she'd had a little bit more to do in the main story, but I do like her a lot. And Wazy was great. I absolutely love Wazy. Um, him being around, him being mysterious. He's great. And now that I know his secret, I cannot wait to go back and replay Zero and Azure after I'm done with this whole series to be able to see what it's like to know that he's a Gralls Ritter the whole time, you know? I've already talked about Kevin and the moment with the Merkaba and how cool that is. Just the moment where he's like, hey, Rufina wouldn't be too happy with me doing this, but it's got to be done, and activates his stigma. It's just really good. I like Wald in this game. Wald, unable to move forward with himself, with his own strength, takes on a form that he should not have in an attempt to be able to stand against Wazy, and still is not able to. And so instead then he winds up joining Wazy, and we get to see him in the final picture we get at the end, wearing the church's like Gralls Ritter clothes, which is really cool. There's a lot of little things too. The stuff with Armand that you meet again, with his dad Gable, everything going on with Armorica Village, and the stuff with Chief Tolta and his son, all those fun side quests. There's a lot of fun side content that you can do, right? I want to talk about my favorite moment in this game, though. Oh, no, there's one other that I forgot. Okay, I want to talk about my two favorite moments in this game, and then we'll wrap it up. Because, again, I could just keep going, right? The scene with Lloyd and Guy, where it's revealed that Kia was going to use her power to bring Guy back. And there could even be a version of this where Lloyd and Guy are together in the SSS, along with everyone else. But it's not real. It would just be fake. And so Lloyd has to turn away from it. It reminds me so much of the moment where, and now the dream has ended, from Sky SC with Estelle and her mom, when Luciola tries to bewitch her, and she has to leave her mom behind because it's not real. As good as it would be to have them, it's not really them. And so they have to leave. And the other one is, oh man, okay. The other one is the Patter Matter moment. It's probably going to go down as one of my favorite moments in the entire franchise. It's the moment where Rin has come to help, right? She wants to help the SSS. She wants to help her actual parents and her little brother Colin. And so Estelle and Joshua, of course, have come with her, right? And their goal is to take down the blue ion unit, because if they can take down the blue Aeon unit, then everybody's got a chance, right? Kevin's job is the pink one. The SSS has the white one. Ren, Estelle, Joshua, and Patter Matter have the blue one. And Patter Matter just can't win. It can't win that fight, even though Ren is insistent that Patter Matter would never lose. Patter Matter just can't win. And so the team comes together, and they do their best to fight it off. And then there's just this moment where Patter Matter, like, is against the mountainside, and the blue one turns to blast Ren. And Patter Matter just comes in, grabs it, flies up, and self-destructs. And it's such a good moment. And then you just have, like, Rin going, it's okay, we'll fix you, we'll repair you. And Patter Matter's like, no, I'm busted. And even Joshua's like, we can't. And then Patter Matter says goodbye. And shuts down, just dies. And when Rin started crying, I started crying, because even though she's got Joshua and Estelle now, even though she's repaired some of that, just a little bit of that bridge with the Hayworths, Patter Matter has been her parent for this whole time, right? And it did its job. It protected her. And yeah, I think that's an incredible scene. I do also really like that scene with Guy and Arios in the flashback, where guys just like, why don't we, just go grab some drinks instead? You know, we can't kill each other because then how are you going to be at my wedding? I think that's where Azure really excels. Azure, it's the character moments, right? There's some really hype, great action scenes in this game, but it's the character moments that I think really define this game. And I absolutely have to recommend it. Anybody that says skip the crossbow duology, you don't need to play them because they're not localized. Well, the Geofront has localized them for you. It's a little bit more work than just buying them and downloading them, but it's not that bad. Just check them out. Right now, my ranking would be Trails in the Sky second chapter, Trails of Azure, Trails to Azure, Trails of Zero. No. Trails in the Sky second chapter, Trails to Azure, Trails in the Sky third, Trails of Zero, Trails in the Sky FC, Trails in the Sky, Trails of Cold Steel 1. That would be my current ranking. I think that this is a really great game. I guarantee you, stuff that I haven't brought up, stuff that I haven't talked about. Great moments on the Merkaba right at the end with characters like Grace or Dudley that are just trying to cheer you on. Abyss becomes so much better of a character in this game. There's so much. Jonas Sacred is around and doing cool stuff. There's so much in this game. Absolutely recommend it. Second favorite in the series right now. And I cannot wait to continue this story because I want to know what happens to Crossbell now. Much in the way that I finished third and was like, I have to play Crossbell. I have to know what happens to Ren. I have to play Cold Steel. I have to know what happens to Crossbell. Even though I left Cold Steel in a huge cliffhanger at the end of Cold Steel 1, and I definitely wanted to get back for that anyway, I've now redoubled my reasons for wanting to play Cold Steel 2, and I'm very excited to do so. Thanks for everybody that's watched for the 40 minutes of rambling that this has been. But I absolutely adore this game. I didn't even really talk about the theme park or Mishi or anything there. It's a really good game. This is a really, really good game. I absolutely recommend it. The small issues that I have with it pale in comparison to how much fun it is. And I am looking forward to a replay so that I can see all that stuff that I did miss. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. We're going to Cold Steel 2 next. And remember to always enjoy the full spectrum. Trails to Azure has to offer. Editing Trey here with less lighting. Forgot to mention my bonding point was with Ellie. I romanced Ellie in this game just as I did in the first game. And those scenes with her and Lloyd finally able to get back to their unfinished business that they had in Zero were really, really good. I don't know who all you can romance. I'm curious to find out. But I'm going to mess around with some extra second playthrough, stuff like that, see what I can find once I finish the rest of the series. But thanks again for watching. Just wanted to mention that in case people were curious who I romanced. Much later, Editor Trey, who forgot another thing that needed to be brought up, which is how at the beginning of Zero, you play through a short section in the Sun Fort, and you find out in Azure that section of Zero is actually like a different timeline where the whole squad dies. And Kia brought them to a different timeline, basically. That Kia became the Septarian of Zero and of Azure. And then brought to another timeline where they wouldn't die because they would meet Ren, and then they would meet Joshua and Estelle through Ren and be rescued. And I just love that there is a narrative reason for the in media res, and then you start up again. And I haven't gotten through Cold Steel yet, through the whole series, to see if there's a reason why that happens in Cold Steel 1, or if it's just like a tag to grab you and pull you in. But I love that it has an in-narrative, in-universe reason for that start and why it's different when you later have Estelle and Joshua. And I just thought that was really super cool.